Psalm 92 continues the series of hymns that we find in Book 4, beginning with Psalm 90, a psalm of wisdom of Moses. Psalms 91 through 100 are a collection of hymns that are untitled. The authorship is unknown. This suggests that they were used in corporate worship, and perhaps the authorship was not that significant. It wasn't connected to a specific person, biographical situation, or context. So these are for general use. This song does mention that it was a song for the Sabbath. I'll talk about that in a minute. By classification, it's certainly a hymn in its beginning, but it also has some strong elements of wisdom woven within it as well that are echoes of the very first psalm, which may suggest a connection between the beginning of Book 4 and the beginning of Book 1 and the entire Psalter. The superscription tells us this is a song for the Sabbath. And this is not in any other psalm we have this kind of distinction that it is a song for a certain day of the week. But in Jewish tradition, we do find that there were psalms assigned to each day of the week. We noted this back with Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the psalm that begins with creation and ends with God entering the gates of Jerusalem, taking residence with his people. We associated that with the first day of the week, and even suggested perhaps that if this were true during the days of Jesus, that this would have been the hymn that was in the minds of the women as they went to the tomb early that Sunday morning. So it's interesting to think of each of these psalms listed here, think about their theme and how they coordinate perhaps with the days of Passion Week. That's pure speculation whether these psalms were in Jesus' mind and the disciples' mind. We just don't know. But tradition has it that these psalms were assigned to certain days of the week. And you notice that 92, 93, 94, three psalms in Book 4 all make it into this list of liturgical psalms that would have been sung, prayed each day of the week. So very well known. I think we could certainly assume that these were some of the more well-known of the Psalms. We notice the psalm begins with words of wisdom as well as a call to praise. It is good. That's a statement of wisdom, almost like a macarism, almost like a statement of blessing. It's a blessed thing to give thanks to the Lord. And then it describes what that means. Worship is singing praise. It's declaring God's character, his steadfast love, his faithfulness. And notice this is all day, so morning and night. And it is to the accompaniment of music. Wind instruments, the lute, string instruments, the harp, and the melody of the lyre. So we move from this call to praise to the motivation for praise. Why is God worthy of our praise? Well, he's made us glad by the work of his hands. And notice 3 times the word work is used there. Great are your works, O Lord. Your thoughts are very deep. When we think of the thoughts of the Lord, it's not much of a leap to jump to Isaiah 55, where it says that my thoughts are not your thoughts, my ways not your ways. As high as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts than your thoughts. So not only are God's thoughts super high, but they're also very deep. So we make that connection, and this is the reason to praise God's works and God's character in verse 2. And his wisdom. The psalm moves clearly to a section of wisdom in verse 6. The stupid man cannot know, the fool cannot understand this. This is classic wisdom literature. That though the wicked sprout like grass and all evildoers flourish, they are doomed to destruction forever. But you, O Lord, are on high forever. So Yahweh is contrasted with the wicked, who are short-lived like grass. They flourish, but they are doomed to destruction. They, like the enemies of God, they perish. They will be scattered. So we have clearly a contrast between the Lord and between the wicked and their short-lived existence. And then we move back to motivation for praise. But you have exalted my horn like that of the wild ox. Throughout Scriptures, the horn is a metaphor for strength. So the psalmist is saying that you have increased my strength. You have exalted my strength like that of the wild ox, a rather dangerous animal, I would presume. You have poured over me fresh oil. Reminds us of Psalm 23, where the host anoints his guest with oil. And this would have been perceived as a blessing An oil was a good thing. They were aromatic, so it made you smell nicer, and the oil would have been good for the dry skin that the dry climate of the desert would have brought onto a person. So this is a refreshing image here. You've poured oil on me. My eyes have seen the downfall of my enemies. My ears have heard the doom of my evil assailants. Notice the appeal to the senses here. The pouring of fresh oil, that would have been smell, and then sight, and then sound, and verse 10, strength. So we note that. And then we move to another wisdom section in this psalm. And these verses 12 through 15 are meant to be in contrast to verses 6 through 9. So the wicked sprout like grass, but soon die, whereas the righteous flourish like a palm tree, like a cedar in Lebanon. We have two trees here. The palm tree would have been familiar in the south, in the desert part of the topography of Israel, and the cedar would have been to the north, up in the more mountainous regions of Lebanon. So we've covered those two regions, two types of trees. It says they are planted in the house of God. So the righteous are planted in the house of God, and they flourish like a tree in the courts of our God. They still bear fruit in old age. They are ever full of sap and green. So they continually have life even to the end. So it's not too difficult to see this is a correspondence to the very first psalm, which says that the person who meditates on the law of the Lord, with the implication that they obey it, they live according to the law of the Lord, that they'll be like a tree as well. They'll bear fruit. They won't wither. Might say they're ever full of sap and green. Likewise, Psalm 52 will reference the psalmist when he says, I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. So there's a reference to the house of God, planted, rooted. This is a common metaphor. It's also found in the New Testament as well, as a life is compared to a tree. And then in verse 15, the psalmist returns to the theme that it began with, that of praise, to declare that the Lord is upright. He is my rock. There is no unrighteousness in him. So we begin and end with worship surrounding these statements of wisdom and trust in verses 10 and 11. One final observation is that the first three Psalms of Book 4 are all connected by the idea of age. Psalm 90 laments the fact that man's days are few, 70 or 80 at best, and they're full of trouble. And this is in contrast to God, who is from everlasting to everlasting. Now, Psalm 91 expresses ultimate confidence in the one who lengthens days, and the promise that no harm will befall you is expressed in the 91st Psalm. And then Psalm 92 is thanksgiving for the gift of vigor, of life, of freshness, even in old age, a freshness that is derived from being in the presence of God, from being planted in the courts of our God, living in an awareness of the presence of God, and in a constant state of worship. One of the ways I remember this particular psalm is this little tune that I connected with this psalm many, many years ago. I heard someone that sang Psalm 92, 1 through 5 to the tune of If I Were a Rich Man. So it would go like this. It is good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to thy name, O Most High, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning and the night. It is good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to thy name, O Most High, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning and the night. And with the 10-string lute, and with the harp, with resounding music on the lyre, for thou, O Lord, hast made me glad by what thou hast done, and I will sing for joy at the works of thy hands. How great are thy works, O Lord! Thy thoughts are very deep. It is good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to thy name, O Most High, to declare thy loving kindness in the morning and the night.